G'day, Dave here, and we're looking at Titus chapter 2 and verse 3. I've got the difficult job of encouraging women to teach women. Now, I say difficult because I'm sure that there's some people who think that I shouldn't be teaching women, and certainly others who think that I shouldn't be teaching women how and what to be teaching other women. And this is a criticism I think that is very much part of the culture of our age. If you're going to have a right to speak, then you need to come from the right place. And for a man in patriarchy to speak to women who've been subjugated about how they should treat other women, that's just completely not acceptable. And Paul, I think, if he was alive today, would be criticised for that, as would Titus and maybe a whole bunch of other men. But what we're dealing with here is not simply the words of patriarchy. This isn't Paul's idea of how to control women. And this isn't some kind of patriarchal society that's culturally bound. What we're talking about here are Christian relationships. We're speaking of how God's word encourages us to relate to each other, how God's word encourages relationships between men and women, and older men and younger men, and older women and younger women, and men and women, and so on. There's a breadth of teaching here that encourages good, healthy relationships. And good, healthy, spiritual lives flow from healthy ministry relationships. We're to be there for each other. We're to encourage each other. We are to spur each other on. Now in Titus has been encouraging people to step up into leadership. And he is to give them the responsibility of guiding people, to protect them from error and to lead them in the truth. And that will have all kinds of implications for how people think, how they speak, and how they act. In particular, in this second part of chapter 2, the focus will be on women. Let me read to you verse 3 first up. It says there in verse 3, in the same way, that is the same way as what he's been saying to older men, older women are to be reverent in their behaviour, not slanderers, not slaves to excessive drinking. They are to teach what is good. Now, the background here for them to be able to teach that which is good is that they need to have the right character of life. That is, their lives need to be shaped by reverence. I take it's reverence for God. Women who are teaching other women need to be women who have God shaping their life, instructing their life, ruling their life, and guiding their lives. They need to be women who are reverent, who recognise the fact that they're living in relationship with God. They have received from God's grace, God has brought them into his family, and they live now in God's presence, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's out in the community, whether it's gathered together at church. They're to be reverent because life is now lived in the presence of God. And in contrast, it seems like there's a risk for women, and not just women, but it's women that are on view here, that there are two areas in particular that might damage that reverence for God. The first has to do with how they speak, and the second has to do with their attitude towards drink. See it there. In verse 3, they're to be reverent in behaviour, not slanderers, nor slaves to excessive drinking. Now, when it says there they're not to be slanderers, it's a powerful word in the original. It's the word diabolos, or diabolical. And that is, it's kind of consistent with the teaching of the devil. The devil loves to slander people. He loves to bring accusations, even false accusations against people. And this is at the heart of what it is to slander. And so if women are to be teaching other women, then they need to be speaking well with their words, not putting people down, not raising criticisms falsely about others, not gossiping, and not seeking to drag people down to lift themselves up, but rather humbly lifting people up in order to encourage them. That will be the nature of teaching. So they are not to be diabolical, they're not to be slanderers with their words, but nor are they to be enslaved to excessive drink. And it's this nature here of enslaved. It's not saying it's wrong to drink wine. It's not wrong at all to drink wine. Wine's a good gift of God to be received with thanksgiving. But it is wrong to be enslaved, addicted to drink, to excessive alcohol. And again, it's not particularly a woman's problem. There are many men who struggle with exactly the same slavery. People who are addicted to drink, who are starting early in the day, who are continuing on, and it shapes and it damages their relationships, their families, and their lives. Now, if women are to be able to teach other women, and notice what they're to teach them, and we'll see more of this, that is, they are to teach them that which is good. See it in verse 3? They are to teach what is good. If they're going to do that, then their words and their lives need to back that up. And there's no quicker way to undermine your teaching than to be quick to slander other people or to be intoxicated and unable to control yourself. There's the risk. Paul is teaching Titus to encourage leaders and to encourage the whole church community to be focused on loving and building others up. And we won't do that if we ourselves are tearing people down and so intoxicated or caught up with ourselves that we have no concern for those around about us. Women, they are to teach women what is good. And we'll see more of that when we look at this next time.